Attention all units. Last night he slept for 3.5 hours, grinding his teeth for 12 minutes, kicking the covers 3 times, air conditioning at 26 degrees. He didn't sleep well, and now he should have a little headache. Target's breakfast purchase is an Americano, and his dietary fiber intake is currently low. And so far this week, he's consumed 0 soy milk for breakfast, and his preference for coffee has increased. The target chooses to commute by car today, and has a relatively regular charging time, and has formed a regular consumption habit. Attention to all units. Attention to all units. Target enters the display area. According to his activities and consumption habits today, we recommend some laxative products to enter the display. Okay, now start bidding. Take your positions. 3, 2, 1.
How the hell can this be? In fact, the topic of privacy does not only involve Apple. It can even be said that the whole business model of the modern internet revolves around acquiring, trading, mining, and utilizing user data. In the upcoming era of Generate AI, through a variety of means to understand the user's context, will be a mandatory course for all manufacturers. The thin red line between understanding the user and snooping on privacy is now at its most vulnerable and blurred. So in order to understand what Apple has done, we have to be clear what these big companies are taking from you, or how they're taking it, and how it's being analyzed and calculated step by step. From data to user profiles, and then from the profiles to money. Hello everyone, I'm Chu Hao. This time we're going to talk about Apple's privacy protection. This video was co-produced by Pidan and SSPy, who provided some of the content and technical advice. We're going to have a more in-depth cooperation after this, to build up the minority's in-depth content and professional ability. We hope to bring you more high-quality and diversified content, so stay tuned. I remember there was a time when the topic of cell phone eavesdropping was particularly hot. I was discussing something with my friends, and then the ads would start to push you the next minute. A lot of people thought it was scary. Is this cell phone app eavesdropping on me in the background? In fact, it's not. Because first of all, it's too power consuming and easily exposed. Secondly, there is no need to go through all this trouble. Your phone apps and browsers and websites and even the operating system itself. The user data that mined over the years. It's enough to effectively deduce your behavioral biases. It's not really news that good advertisers use big data to infer your preferences, but the data that builds your user profile. It's collected at a level of granularity. I'm afraid many people have never imagined every move you make on your phone or computer, from what keywords you search for, what content you read, what apps you install, to what you do on a particular page. As small as how long you stayed in a specific page, what words you typed on your input method, what words you copied on WeChat, where you've been, what you've bought, and even what other devices are on the same Wi-Fi, can also have an impact on what recommendations you can see, because the devices that are often under the same Wi-Fi is either a family member or probably a coworker. These data can be very accurate in portraying your personal profile. Let me give you an example. If your cell phone has Genshin, Honkai, and Cheoxing every night you use the location of a university male dormitory, that last month there was just a large amount of internet cafe merchant consumption records, also recharges a lot of money in the game, will buy computer peripherals but will not buy too expensive clothes, takeaway, not too many orders. These data across different apps and websites. Through the integration of an advertising SDK application or operating system, they can be easily linked together. Then over time, a male student label with interests, hobbies, spending power, health status is attached to you. So is it necessary to go this far to get you to watch ads? Of course it is. There's a well-known saying in the advertising industry that I know I'm wasting at least half of my advertising dollars, but unfortunately I don't know which half. Every ad you see online is charged by the number of clicks or even the number of times it's displayed. The more effective they are, the more expensive they are. This leads to advertisers doing everything they can to mine your preferences and habits from user data. To make the ads shown to you extremely targeted, the more he knows about you, the more valuable this display is. So advertisers achieve the purpose of publicity through precise placement. The platform earns a cut in the middle and you use the service for free. Seems like there's nothing wrong with all this, right?
The Chinese people are more open or less sensitive about the privacy issue. If they are able to trade privacy for convenience, for safety, for efficiency, in a lot of cases, they're willing to do that.
Robin Li said this in 2018, and China's Personal Information Protection Law was enacted in 2021, that Chinese people are willing to trade privacy for convenience. This statement was made in a context where users do not have the full right to know and do not have sufficient choice. As you may recall, There were a lot of apps at the time. If you didn't agree to get certain permissions, you couldn't use them at all. That was the hooliganism of the internet era. There is a huge inequality of power and responsibility between the platform and the user. It's not that I'm willing to trade privacy for convenience, but under the rules designed by these companies and platforms, I can't have privacy at all. So you may ask, why should I care? Well, whether an ad is targeted or not, it may not matter if I see one more or one less. But knowing the user's preferences can not only push ads, can also be used to make content recommendations. The data mined from you will be turned into content that accurately matches your preferences. But if you can only see or hear one voice, it will change a group of people's attitudes and perceptions of a matter over time. On this topic, I especially recommend watching a Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma. This is really not a sensationalist. All of these horrific things that I've mentioned actually happened just a few years ago, and it's not that far away from us. The device is a one-way glass between the application and you. App sees you clearly, but you know nothing about it. So with that said, we can finally go back and look at what Apple is doing to protect privacy. In fact, looking back at Apple's history of protecting user privacy, it's also the history of the continuous improvement of laws and regulations and the ecology from disorder to order. Apple's privacy protection is centered around 4 basic principles, which are derived from the Privacy by Design framework, which was later incorporated into the GDPR when it was announced and is now the consensus of the entire industry. These include minimizing data interception, on-device data processing, maintaining transparency to users, and finally, security protections. Of these 4 principles, security is the foundation, transparency of permissions is the means. Minimization of data is the ultimate goal. Transparency is the most obvious part of the user's perception. All kinds of pop-ups are always reminding you that your data may be being accessed by apps. And the ability that we mentioned earlier for advertisers to track users has been dismantled over the years by a variety of access controls. That could be used to point to a unique device, the IMEI and the MAC address of the device. Developer access has been completely banned since the days of iOS 7, and in iOS 14, Apple went a step further and introduced an app tracking transparency feature into the system. This pop-up asking apps not to track caused an uproar in the industry at the time. Because if you didn't agree, the app couldn't access your device's advertising identifier. So, there was no way to simply linking the privacy data collected by different apps together. The original way of accurate placement of the Ad Alliance SDK can be said to have been blocked mostly. This year's iOS 18 Apple introduced a new API for device pairing. After using the new API, apps will not be able to scan your Wi-Fi network during device pairing activation. Prevents apps from scanning for other devices with fixed MAC addresses and associating you with your network. That, combined with limited access to location, albums, and new this year, contact data. All of these tools make it harder for apps to track the behavior of different apps directly or indirectly. Even harder for apps to link behavioral data from different apps to create a complete picture of you. In the past, when you used app ABC, they knew it was you by cross-referencing. But if you're using app A and they think you're user A, and using app B they think you're user B, then I can say this. Apple is making the device exclusive to you with more personalization features on the one hand and a series of privacy protections on the other. And on the other hand, with a series of privacy features that blur the connection between you and the apps. Apps can't see you through the device, but they can control your behavior. Apple is trying to do is reverse the direction of this one-way glass. The reason why Apple has made the privacy features so detailed is because of the user's point of view, and the reason is simple. Because Apple makes all of its money from its users. Even in Mr. Lowe's words, Apple's hardware is a vicious moneymaker, and it has no worries about doing these things. Google, Samsung, Xiaomi, Huawei, and so on. Advertising business is a very important part of the company's revenue. Take Xiaomi, for example. According to its earnings report, Xiaomi's advertising revenue for the 2003 fiscal year was 20.5 billion yuan, and its adjusted net profit for the year was 19.3 billion yuan. In other words, if HyperOS really cuts all the ads, then Xiaomi is purely losing money. But honestly, this is not only a problem of Xiaomi's, but the whole domestic cell phone brands epitomized. It's just that Xiaomi has gone public. These data must be disclosed publicly. When the price of cell phones is decreasing, if cell phone manufacturers don't rely on internet revenues to subsidize hardware costs, they're bound to be eliminated first in the competitive marketplace. Although Meizu was not completely killed by the 3-0 cell phone, but if it dares to take this step, it's basically a death sentence. So this involves a very important issue of trust. I've looked carefully at the privacy settings of each phone and the white papers. I'm sure and believe that these cell phone manufacturers have strictly implemented the relevant laws and regulations on privacy protection, and almost all of their features are on par with Apple's. Some of these features have valuable insights such as returning null data to apps, preventing apps from being associated with each other, and so on. But when you're looking at ads popping up in notifications every day, when you realize that the company's hardware doesn't make any money, how do you build that trust? Is a difficult question in front of these companies. So finally, I'm going to dig a little deeper. Back to Steve Jobs' 2010 interview at D8. It's actually very clear. Apple hadn't been as thorough in its privacy protection, and there had been a few privacy and security crises. But Apple decided to make privacy and security a top priority. Privacy is a basic human right, and that's when the idea of privacy was established internally. Over the next few years, by practicing it from the top down, through the company's system and product design process, they kept the core hardware and software in their own hands. That's how they got to where we are today. Tell users over and over again in simple words. Let users make their own choices and can say no at any time. This is what Apple is still doing today. Privacy is in Apple's DNA, and it's something that's really embedded in their head.
Yeah. Privacy means people know what they're signing up for in plain English and repeatedly. That's what it means. I'm an optimist. I believe people are smart, and some people want to share more data than other people do. Ask them. Ask them every time. Make them tell you to stop asking them if they get tired of you asking them. Let them know precisely what you're going to do with their data.
Okay.
That's what we think.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we open up the...
In the last few years, privacy has become more than just features of the system. It's become a lot of weapons of marketing. This little Apple-shaped lock clicks. Everyone knows it's Apple privacy. It's become as influential a brand asset as iOS and Apple Music. It's even an important part of the Privacy Moat. I remember it very well. Although Apple didn't participate in the CES in 2019, but it painted a huge wall ad outside the venue. That year, Google and Amazon frequently flip-flopped on privacy issues. This wave can be said to be full of ridicule, but jokes aside, Apple's privacy features are really quite good now. Optimized contacts, select a photo selector for new device pairing API, clipboard pop-up, app tracking pop-ups, MAC address rotation, location requests, privacy reports, etc. As long as you're serious about the choices you make when the notification pops up, it's pretty much a dead end for privacy leaks. It's a very secure thing. Of course, I also see Huawei at this year's developer conference specifically emphasized privacy protection over the company's business interests and introduced a series of privacy and security features. For example, when scanning QR code, you don't need camera permissions to return the results directly to the app, or encrypting files for specific contacts when sharing them. These are all things that only HarmonyOS could do. Huawei has really come into its own. The most interesting thing is that when I was writing this article, I searched for Huawei's product manager. He wrote 5 articles in the HarmonyOS developer forum about Apple's privacy efforts over the years, and analyzed the logic behind it. So it seems I'm not the only one who thinks Apple is still worth studying and researching. So I'm also looking forward to when the HarmonyOS is rolled out. What Huawei can do with this second walled garden after iOS. Finally, I would like to talk about the issue of trust. I remember during WWDC, Zila told a very interesting story in their video. He said there were 2 groups of people around him. One group of people think that Apple is regulated by European and American organizations and is definitely not safe. The other group of people think it's insecure for Apple to use Guizhou on the cloud. Those 2 groups of people started from completely opposite points of view. From completely opposite points of view, they deduce the same conclusion, but at the same time their own internal logic is completely self-consistent. So by citing this example, I actually want to say that iCloud now does a lot of data end-to-end encryption. Technically guaranteed. In addition to your own key, even Apple can't decrypt the data. Even if you still don't trust Apple, then it doesn't matter. Because the rules it gives to handle privacy and the design of the function are absolutely exemplary. So, no matter from the perspective of competition or user experience, these features will become the standard in the industry. Eventually, non-Apple users will also benefit. Ads won't go away, and data capture and analysis won't stop. There's bound to be new ways of tracking data, and new ways to snoop on privacy. But I also believe Apple will continue to push the industry to fight this with new rules and new technology. And the game of privacy is destined to never end.